It's 10 GMT and we begin this news hour with Ukraine and Russia accusing each other of blowing up a major dam. That's sparking warnings of severe flooding in Russian-controlled territory downstream of the dam in the region of Kherson. Water levels there have risen by 10 meters. The Nova Kakhovka dam links the banks of the Dnipro river held by Russia on the south side to Kyiv on the north. The mayor there says at least 600 houses have been flooded and people are being evacuated. Further up the river is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, but the IAEA says it faces no immediate risk. Stephanie Decker begins our coverage.
A massive surge of water at the Chapova dam in the Kherson region of southern Ukraine after an explosion in the early hours of Tuesday. This area is under the control of Russian forces. Russia blames Ukraine for this. Ukraine blames Russia. The Russian-installed mayor of Nova Kakhovka, the area surrounding the dam, appeared on Russian TV.
First of all, the Chapova hydroelectric power station has been destroyed because of multiple strikes. Currently, the water level continues to rise. For those who know the town, it is already at Dnipro Avenue. The dam is being washed away. We are evacuating people that are downstream. A large number of infrastructure objects have already been flooded. Sewage pumping stations, power lines were destroyed, some houses too. Water is flowing down uncontrollably.
This was the dam before the explosion. It stands 30 meters tall and 3.2 kilometers long and built in 1956 on the Dnipro River as part of the Chapova hydroelectric power plant. It also supplies water to the Crimean Peninsula, annexed by Russia in 2014. Water from the dam is essential for cooling Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Zaporizhzhia. Russia controls the plant, and along with Ukraine's State Atomic Power Agency and the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, have all said the situation at the plant is under control. The waters have submerged parts of Nova Kakhovka. The Russians say water levels will continue to rise for about 72 hours and then start to go down. It was not immediately clear, however, how the flood waters would affect Ukraine's long-planned counteroffensive against Russian forces who are dug in across southern and eastern Ukraine. Stephanie Decker, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's now speak to journalist Yulia Shapo-valova, who's live from Moscow. Yulia, the Ukrainians accusing Russia of blowing up this dam. What are authorities in Moscow and the Russian-controlled region of Kherson saying about this?
So, as we understand, some pro-Russian authorities of the Nova Kakhovka denied the accusations that Russia was behind the destruction of the station. The Russian-appointed mayor of the town of Nova Kakhovka said that the destruction of the station was a catastrophe and it was created by the Ukrainian authorities and those who control them. He also said that the Ukrainian armed forces continued the shelling of the town of Nova Kakhovka and the authorities were figuring out how to evacuate people from there. And the authorities also said that the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station cannot be restored. It will have to be built from scratch now. According to acting governor of the Kherson region, Vladimir Saldo, the armed forces of Ukraine decided to damage the food security of the Kherson region by destroying the hydroelectric power station in order to divert attention from the failures in the so-called Ukrainian counteroffensive. But he added that the situation will not prevent the Russian forces from protecting the left bank of the Dnipro River in the Kherson region.
Yulia, a vital channel, I understand, carrying water from the Dnipro River to Russian-occupied Crimea, which starts at the Nova Kakhovka, is also likely to be affected. What are you hearing about the situation in Crimea?
Yeah, sure. But first, according to acting governor of the Kherson region, again, Vladimir Saldo, the destruction of the dam has led to the flooding and even washing away of agricultural fields along the river Dnipro. And it has led to the flow of a large but not critical amount of water in the Dnipro River. Therefore, the evacuation of a large number of people will not be required. That's correct. The Ukrainian side earlier on pointed out that the explosions at the Kakhovka power station meant that the Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula, would be left without water. That's according to the head of Crimea, Sergei Aksyonov, there is a risk that shallow water in the North Crimean Canal might be one of the consequences of that situation. Also, the Ukrainian side, as well as head of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, have said that the situation creates risks for the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant due to the possible shortage of water to cool down the reactors. But according to an advisor to the head of Russia's Rosenergoatom, the water in the pools of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant actually are not used to cool down the reactors, and there is no connection at all with the Kakhovka reservoir with the pools. That's what we're hearing at their end.
Well, right. The IAEA has also said that there is no immediate risk to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Yulia, thank you very much for that. Yulia Shapo-valova live there in Moscow. Well, let's discuss this all further now with Andrii Ryzhenko, who's a fellow at the Center for Defence Strategies in Ukraine. He's also a retired captain of Ukraine's Navy and former assistant to the Ukrainian Minister of Defence. Thank you very much, Mr. Ryzhenko, for being with us on Al Jazeera. Can I ask you first what evidence Ukraine has that Russia blew up the Nova Kakhovka dam?
Yeah, first of all, character of destructions shows that it's quite extensive destruction. 11 out of 28 sections of the dam were destroyed. And actually, this is possible only in case of preposition explosive. And currently, Ukrainian military, they are assessing how much explosive can cause such a tremendous damage of this dam and electric power plant at all, because all electric power plant actually destroyed. And it cannot happen just as a consequence of the artillery strike or rocket strike. And also some witnesses who actually observed this explosion, they said it was like internal explosion inside of the dam, and not any incoming artillery or rockets.
Right. So are the Ukrainians saying, sorry to interrupt you, sir, are the Ukrainians saying that the Russians are responsible based on eyewitnesses?
Yes, yeah.
Is that enough evidence to blame Russia?
Yeah, now they collect, and also it's important to see how much explosive actually caused such tremendous damages actually, because again, it's the most probably it's a tons of explosives. It's not actually tens of kilograms, which can be brought by artillery shells or even rockets actually. And this is quite. And we know that they start to collect this explosive in Nova Kakhovka hydroelectric plant starting from last fall.
Okay.
And also some of the people, saying that it can be Russians could actually their plan was to make small explosion to break this bridge, which located on the top of the dam, not let Ukrainian troops to cross it.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that. Let me just pick up on what you've been saying, please, sir. So Ukraine blames Russia based on eyewitness accounts mostly. Let me ask you now, what would Russia gain from doing this? Why would the Russians have done this? How does the destruction of this dam affect dynamics on the battlefield? What do they gain from this?
Actually, I think that, first of all, Russians doesn't have many troops on the left bank of the Dnipro River in this direction. They concentrated most of the troops a little bit to the north of this area, close to Zaporizhzhia city. And they probably try to prevent crossing via bridge, or only actually existing bridge, via Dnipro River, which located on the top of the dam of the Kakhovka, Nova Kakhovka electric power plant. But probably they miscalculated, and this miscalculation caused much greater explosion than they actually planned. And because also from witnesses, Russians were extremely surprised with the consequences of this flooding, because some of their troops located very close to the coastline of the Dnipro on the left bank of the river.
Okay. Now, Mr. Ryzhenko, so you say the Russians could have done this to stop Ukrainian advances further south. And we've seen in the past few days there's clearly been a push by the Ukrainian military, even if they're not officially saying that this is the start of the long-awaited counteroffensive they've been planning. We've seen a push by the Ukrainian military. How does the destruction of this dam affect Ukraine's plans and Ukraine's counteroffensive?
I think not much, because mostly it's like it's just harm and huge the danger for the population, for Ukrainian citizens living on both banks of the Dnipro River. In total, it's estimation around 300,000 people can live in this area, but this number just before war. Speaking about military plans, it's not changing too much, because this flooding can happen just maybe 10 kilometers from each coast of the Dnipro River. It's quite far away to the access to the Crimea Peninsula, and actually it will not change much. Actually, maybe even the whole plans for them for this counteroffensive.
Thank you for sharing your views with us. Andrii Ryzhenko, retired captain of Ukraine's Navy and a former assistant to Ukraine's Minister of Defence, joining us there from Kyiv. Thank you for your time.